If you've been paying attention to the news this week at all, you've probably been reading about Bill Hybels and some of his missteps and what's coming out with Willow Creek and with the association. And, he has stepped down. The leadership, many of the elders have stepped down at his church. And we're going to talk about what the Bible says about Bill Hybels and his sin. And the first thing is, I think we need to recognize that no believer is above the temptation to lust and to lie. Bill Hybels is one of my personal heroes. He was a guy that I always respected and loved his approach to ministry. But even he wasn't above this temptation. Paul says in Ephesians 4, throw off your old sinful nature and your former way of life, which is corrupted by lust and deception. Instead, let the Spirit renew your thoughts and attitudes. And it's interesting because if you read up above this passage, Ephesians 4 talks a lot about church leadership and how the leaders in the church are truly a gift to the church. But then later Paul says we all have to remember that we have an old way. We have a temptation to lust and deception. No one is above it, not even someone as influential as Bill Hybels. The second insight is that godly church leadership is a serious requirement. Every time somebody in the limelight, one of these megachurch leaders falls, and we've had a lot of them, haven't we? Every time somebody falls, we're reminded of how important leadership is in the church. And this is what Paul talks about in 1 Timothy chapter 3. He says, a church leader must be a man whose life is above reproach. He must be faithful to his wife. He must exercise self-control, live wisely, and have a good reputation. Now, Bill Hybels famously held his staff, his pastoral staff, his leaders, his elders, he held them to a very high standard. I'm sure he used this very passage because this is the biblical requirement for an elder. But in his own life, somehow he looked the other way. He failed to hold himself up to these same standards that are so clearly evident in Paul's writing. And here's the third thing. Healthy churches resist the urge to give their favorites a pass. I admit it in my own life. I want to give those people that I idolize, I want to give them a pass. I want to extend a little extra grace to those people. Maybe to people that are arrogant, people that I don't particularly like, I'll be quick to judge them. But someone like Hybels, who I've always respected, there's a temptation to give him a pass, and I'm sure that's what was happening with the leadership there at the church. Yet 1 Timothy 5 makes it clear how the healthy churches are supposed to handle this, how a biblical church should handle it. Yeah, don't entertain an accusation against an elder unless 2 or 3 witnesses confirm it. And clearly that's what was happening in Hybels' situation. More and more women started to come forward. And pretty soon it was evident that there was a pattern there. As much as everybody loved Hybels, as much as those elders had personally related to him, and the pastors and leaders, the senior leadership, they personally felt indebted to him. Yet it was pretty clear that there was a pattern that they had to pay attention to. I encourage you to pray for Bill Hybels and his wife and his kids and his grandkids and the church and the Willow Creek Association. And pray for the women who have come forward who were victimized more than anything. And pray that somehow God would redeem this situation, and he does this all the time. But also take a minute to pause and think about what you and your church can learn from everything that's going on.